On a cold, grey afternoon in November 1940, a man walked into the Sherry Netherland Hotel in New York City. He was 63 years old, dressed in a perfectly tailored suit, the kind only the wealthiest men in America could afford. To the hotel staff, he looked like just another rich patron coming in for a drink, but inside, his mind was shattering. He walked past the reception into the cloakroom and sat down on a small cushioned stool. He took out a leather notebook and a gold pen. With a hand that trembled slightly, he wrote a note to his wife. It read, "My dear Nina, can't help it. Things have been bad with me. I'm tired of fighting. Can't carry on any longer. This is the only way out. I am unworthy of your love. I am a failure." Moments later, the staff heard a gunshot. The man lying on the floor was not a beggar. He was not a nobody. Just 10 years earlier, he was the richest man in the world. He had made $100 million in a single day, while the rest of America was starving in breadlines. His name was Jesse Livermore, and this is the true, unfiltered story of how he conquered the world, became the king of Wall Street, and why, in the end, he destroyed himself. To understand the magnitude of his fall, we must first understand his rise. The story begins in 1891 on a poor farm in Massachusetts. Jesse was born into a life of hard labor. His father expected him to plow fields, feed animals, and live a life of poverty. But Jesse had a different mind. He didn't see the world in dirt and crops. He saw the world in numbers. At the age of 14, his father pulled him out of school to work on the farm full time. Jesse refused. With only $5 in his pocket and a head full of dreams, he ran away from home. He arrived in Boston, a bustling city of commerce, and found a job at a stock brokerage office called Payne Weber. His job was the lowest on the ladder. He was a chalk boy. His duty was to listen to the stock prices coming in from the ticker tape machine, a loud, clicking device that printed stock quotes on paper and write them on a big chalkboard for the rich traders to see. Day after day, hour after hour, Jesse wrote numbers. United States Steel, 85. Union Pacific, 100. American Sugar, 42. Most people just saw random numbers on that board. But Jesse, young and silent, began to see a heartbeat. He realized that stock prices didn't move randomly. They had a personality. They had patterns. If a stock hit $50, it would often bounce to 52. If it broke a certain level, it would crash. He realized that the numbers were not just math. They were a reflection of human psychology. It was fear and greed playing out in real time over and over again. He kept a small notebook in his pocket, recording his predictions. He would write down exactly where he thought a stock was going. Then he would wait. Within weeks, he realized he was right almost to 100% of the time. He wanted to trade, but he had no money for the real New York Stock Exchange. So he went to the bucket shops. These were shady, illegal gambling dens in the back streets of Boston. In a bucket shop, you didn't actually buy the stock certificates. You didn't own anything. You just bet on whether the price would go up or down. It was pure gambling. Jesse walked into a bucket shop called Height and Fries. He placed his first bet on a railroad stock called Burlington. He risked his entire life savings, all the money he had earned working as a chalk boy. He watched the board. The price moved exactly as he predicted. He won. By the age of 15, Jesse had made his first $1,000. In the late 1800s, that was a small fortune, more money than his father had made in years of farming. By 20, he had made $10,000. He was so accurate, so deadly in his predictions, that the bucket shops started losing money. They realized that this kid wasn't gambling, he was calculating. One by one, the shops started banning him. They called him the boy plunger. He became a legend in the underground world. He had to wear fake beards, use fake names, and hide his face just to place a trade. But the market always knew it was him. Whenever a massive bet was placed and won, the owners knew the boy plunger was in the house. At 21, with pockets full of cash and nowhere left to gamble in Boston, Jesse Livermore decided to go to the big leagues. He packed his bags for New York City. Wall Street was waiting, but Wall Street was a different beast. In the bucket shops, execution was instant. You saw a price, you bet, you won. On Wall Street there were delays. You had to buy the stock through a broker who sent the order to the floor, where it was executed hours later. The delay killed his system. Jesse lost everything. He went broke. Then he borrowed money, made it back, and went broke again. It was a brutal education. But Jesse had a gift that no other trader had. He could smell fear, and he learned that to win on Wall Street, you didn't just need math, you needed patience. His first legendary moment came in 1907. The American economy began to crumble. Banks were failing. There was a shortage of cash. Panic was spreading through the streets like a virus. While everyone else was praying for the market to go up, Jesse saw the truth. The market was sick. It was dying. He did something that terrified normal people. He started shorting. He bet that the market would crash. He targeted a stock called Union Pacific. The price was high, and everyone thought it would go higher. Jesse sold it short. On October 24th, 1907, the panic hit. Stock prices collapsed. It was a bloodbath. Grown men cried on the floor of the exchange. Banks closed their doors. People lost their life savings in an instant. But as the prices fell, Jesse's account skyrocketed. Every dollar the market lost was a dollar Jesse gained. In a single day, he made $1 million. To put that in perspective, in 1907, you could buy a mansion for $5,000. Jesse had just made $1 million. The crash was so severe that the legendary J.P. Morgan, the man who practically owned the American banking system, had to step in. Morgan knew that if the selling didn't stop, the entire country would go bankrupt. He sent a personal messenger to Jesse Livermore. The message was simple but shocking. Please stop selling, for the sake of the country. Imagine that power. Imagine being 30 years old and having so much leverage that the richest banker in history has to beg you to stop destroying the economy. Jesse had a code. He agreed. He stopped shorting. Then he used his massive profits to buy at the bottom, just as the market turned. When the recovery happened, his wealth tripled to $3 million. He was the king of New York. He bought a 200-foot yacht. He bought mansions on Long Island. He bought a fleet of cars. He had mistresses, parties, and a lifestyle of pure excess. He thought he was invincible. He thought he had solved the market. But the market has a way of humbling those who become arrogant. Greed is a slow poison, and for Jesse, it came in the form of a commodity, cotton. After the excitement of 1907, stocks felt boring. He wanted more action. He met a man named Percy Thomas, known as the Cotton King. Percy was charming, famous, and convincing. Jesse, who had a strict rule to never listen to anyone and always work alone, made a fatal mistake. He broke his own rule. He listened to a tip. The Cotton King told Jesse to buy cotton, saying there was a shortage. Secretly, the Cotton King was selling his own cotton to Jesse. Jesse bought millions of dollars worth. The price collapsed. It happened fast. The yachts, gone. The mansions, gone. The millions, vaporized. By 1915, the man who saved Wall Street filed for bankruptcy. He had debts of over $2 million and assets of absolutely nothing. The humiliation was total. The newspapers mocked him. His friends abandoned him. Most men would have quit. Most men would have jumped off a bridge. But Jesse Livermore was not most men. He knew one thing. The market never changes because human nature never changes. He sat in a small, cheap office, staring at the chalkboard again. He started trading with tiny amounts of borrowed money. He followed his old rules. Cut your losses quickly, let your winners run, and never ever listen to anyone else. Slowly, painfully, he clawed his way back. It took him 10 years, but by the mid-1920s he was back on top, and this time he was quieter, darker, and much, much more dangerous. Then came 1929, the Roaring Twenties. Then came 1929, the Roaring Twenties. America was drunk on money. The stock market was going up every single day. It was a mania. Shoeshine boys were giving stock tips. Taxi drivers were mortgaging their houses to buy shares of Ford and General Motors. Waiters were checking stock prices between serving tables. Economists famously said, "We have reached a permanently high plateau." The world was screaming, "BUI." But in a secret office on Fifth Avenue, guarded by armed security, Jesse Livermore sat in silence. He had a private staff of clerks. No one was allowed to speak to him during trading hours. He looked at the tape. He saw what no one else saw. The volume was massive, but prices were stalling. The smart money was quietly selling, while the dumb money, the regular public, was buying at the top. Jesse realized the entire economy was a bubble waiting to burst. In the summer of 1929, Jesse started building the biggest position of his life. He didn't just short a few stocks, he shorted the entire American economy. He used more than 100 different stockbrokers to place his orders so that no one would know it was him. He was betting against America. By October, he was losing money. The market kept drifting higher. He was down millions on paper. His friends told him he was crazy. They said, "America is booming, Jesse. Don't bet against the future." He went on a vacation to Atlantic City to clear his head, but he couldn't relax. He rushed back to New York. He felt it coming. Then came October. The market hesitated. Then it slipped. Then it broke. On October 29, Black Tuesday, the bottom fell out. It wasn't just a crash, it was an annihilation. Panic swept the floor of the New York Stock Exchange. Stocks like General Electric and U.S. Steel lost half their value in hours. People gathered outside the exchange, screaming and crying. Rumors spread that big bankers were jumping out of windows. It was the beginning of the Great Depression. At Jesse's mansion on Long Island, his wife Dorothy was in a panic. She heard the news on the radio. She saw the headlines. She thought they were poor again. She remembered the bankruptcy of 1915. She was packing her jewelry, crying, waiting for Jesse to come home and tell her they were ruined. Jesse walked through the front door late that evening. He didn't look stressed. He looked calm. He saw her crying and asked, "What's wrong?" She screamed. "We are ruined. The world is ruined. What are we going to do?" Jesse smiled, a cold, faint smile. He poured himself a drink and said, "No, darling, we are not ruined. This has been the best trading day of my life. While the world lost $30 billion, while families lost their homes and businesses closed forever, Jesse Livermore had made $100 million in cash. Adjusted for inflation, that is well over $1.5 billion today. He had made it all in a few short days. He was now one of the richest men on the planet. But fame came with a heavy price. The public needed someone to blame for the Great Depression. They couldn't blame the banks, so they blamed the trader. Newspapers called him the Great Bear. They wrote articles saying he single-handedly destroyed the American dream. He received death threats in the mail. People wanted to kidnap his children. He had to hire armed bodyguards just to walk him to his office. He had the money. He had the power. But the curse of 1929 was just beginning. You would think that a man with $100 million would retire. You would think he would find peace. But a trader is like a soldier. Without a war, he has no purpose. The 1930s were cruel to Jesse. The government created the SEC, the Securities and Exchange Commission, to regulate the market. The wild days of the bucket shops and manipulation were over. The rules had changed, but Jesse tried to play the old game. His personal life began to rot. His wife, Dorothy, became a severe alcoholic. They divorced in a messy public scandal that cost him millions. He married again to a woman named Harriet Metz. Harriet was a beautiful socialite, but she had a dark history. Jesse was her fifth husband. All four of her previous husbands had committed suicide. It was a dark omen that Jesse ignored. In 1935, tragedy struck closer to home. His son, Jesse Livermore Jr., got into a drunken argument with his mother, Dorothy. In the heat of the moment, Dorothy pulled out a gun and shot her own son. He survived, but the scandal was splashed across every newspaper in the country. The shame destroyed Jesse's soul. He started drinking heavily. The sharp mind that could calculate fractions in seconds began to fade in a haze of depression and alcohol. And then the unforgivable happened. Jesse went back to the market to try and feel alive again. But he was trading with emotion now, not logic. He was desperate to prove he was still the king. He broke every rule he had ever written. He didn't cut his losses. He added to losing positions. Slowly, trade by trade, the $100 million evaporated. By 1934, he was bankrupt again. But this time, he was almost 60 years old. He didn't have the energy to fight back. He sat in his office, staring at the ticker tape, but the numbers didn't speak to him anymore. They were just silence. Which brings us back to that cold afternoon on November 28th, 1940. Jesse walks into the Sherry Netherland Hotel. He sits on that stool in the cloakroom. He is tired. He looks at his life. The bucket shops of Boston, the yachts, the crash of 1907 where he saved the country, the crash of 1929 where he broke the country, the screaming crowds, the silence of the tape. He realizes he has conquered the market, but he could never conquer himself. He writes his final words in that leather notebook. My dear Nina, can't help it. Things have been bad with me. I am tired of fighting. Can't carry on any longer. This is the only way out. I am unworthy of your love. I am a failure of. I am a failure. Jesse Livermore died broke. When his estate was calculated, his liabilities exceeded his assets. The man who mastered the market could not master his own mind. He left us with the greatest trading lessons ever learned. He taught us that money is made in the sitting, not the trading. He taught us to never average down a loss. But his life is the ultimate warning. He taught us that money made from greed is temporary. He taught us that the market is a mirror. It reflects your own fear, your own ego, and your own weakness back at you. In the end, the market didn't kill Jesse Livermore. He killed himself. He was right when he famously said, "There is nothing new on Wall Street. Whatever happens in the stock market today has happened before and will happen again." Why? Because human nature never changes. The pockets change, the suckers change, the stocks change, but Wall Street never changes because human nature never changes. Don't be a gambler, be a trader, and never forget the price of greed.